All right, taking a break from the NBA Finals to talk some Niners here. Is Brandon Aiyuk not going to sign a deal with San Francisco after all? A new Aiyuk update coming your way on the show as Matt Maiocco, NBC Sports Bay Area, saying, quote, "It's entirely possible that the 49ers do not sign Aiyuk to a long-term contract and let him play out the final year of his deal." And then Brandon Aiyuk's wide receiver coach, TJ Houshmandzadeh, really good player back in the day for the Cincinnati Bengals, said on 95.7 The Game this afternoon that about a month and a half ago, Aiyuk thought that he was close to signing an extension with the Niners. And he said this, did Houshmandzadeh, quote, "At one point, Brandon thought he may sign. That optimistic outlook has turned into a pessimistic outlook." We're going to talk about all of this here and what it means for San Francisco, and that's why you subscribe to the 49ers Report. I'm Chase Sr. Anytime there's a big Niner update out there, I have you covered, so make sure you hit that sub button. Let's start off on the Mayoko front. Matt Maiocco is a very trusted 49ers reporter. He has a good relationship with Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. He does, from a television standpoint, highly produced sit-down interviews with them frequently on NBC Sports Bay Area. And Maiocco, because of that and because he's a really good reporter, tapped into the organization. You know, I was around him at the NFL Combine. I was around him at the Super Bowl. I had him on the show 2 years ago at the Super Bowl. He's what you call a Big J journalist. And I mean that as a compliment. An old school journalist and reporter who is the antithesis of this hot take, have an opinion era that we've seen take over the media industry. And look, here on this show, I'll admit, in addition to reporting news, passing along my analysis, yeah, I do have opinions because that's how my brain works. And I like to share my opinions with my particular broadcasting style, and the wheels are always churning inside my head to come up with opinions and takes, but also analysis. And then I'll, of course, talk news. It's just a different style as compared to Maiocco, who writes and does TV and digital content for NBC Sports Bay Area. And I say all of this because Maiocco, I don't think, would just say this, right? He's not about clickbait, outlandish reporting. He's about the facts, what he's hearing, he'll pass that along. He's very measured. So here's what Maiocco had to say about Brandon Aiyuk and where things stand right now with him and the 49ers. Quote, "This one just feels a little bit different because they've already paid all these guys, and at some point the money or the cap space just kind of runs out. And when you have a team full of really good players, teams can't keep everybody, and you just kind of wonder what's going to happen to Brandon Aiyuk." That's the first part of it. Now, there's something to be said there because the 49ers have handed out a lot of money, but also at the same time, you look at their history as an organization when it comes down to contract extensions, always late July, August. And then for Nick Bosa's sake, September, but there was so much guaranteed money at play, he became the highest paid non-quarterback in the history of football. So that's part one of what Maiocco had to say. And then there was this. Do the Niners really want to pay him the going rate for wide receivers, or do they think that maybe money can be allocated in other areas? Bracing for Brock Purdy's contract. It'll be really interesting to see how all of this plays out. It's entirely possible that they don't sign him to a long-term contract and let him play out the final year of his deal and see where it goes from there. Maybe kick the can down the road a little bit. That's the second part. My takeaways on all of that, look, I imagine that Aiyuk sees the money handed out and he's like, where's my bag? You pay Christian McCaffrey and not me. Huh. 49ers now have all of this cap space, $32 million. What's the holdup? Other wide receivers across the NFL, they're getting paid, but not me? Interesting. And from his standpoint, and maybe the Niners standpoint, definitely the Niners standpoint, in fact, the wide receiver talent pool in the NFL draft every single year is getting increasingly better, where you can find really good wideouts in the first 3-4 rounds who end up being really good players, number ones and number twos across the league. And so from the Niners standpoint, they're like, man, and I talked about this before the draft, there are so many good wide receivers coming out of the draft every single year. Does it make sense to pay 2 wide receivers $25+ million? I think Aiyuk's going to cash in for 28 to 30 now because the Niners have waited. The market's gone up. Debo's already making 24, 25. And so that becomes a risk. Now the Dolphins paying Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill. The Eagles paying A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. The Bengals, I would imagine most likely going to be paying Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. So wide receiver duos are a thing. But I imagine that both sides are kind of looking at that as a factor in this. You go back to the Niners' history of signing deals. You know, they've taken care of their homegrown players in 4 straight years. Mayoko, for him to say, this one feels different. Does it, though? Because I know I've been on this beat covering the Niners for what is going to be my 4th NFL season and talking about the team every single day. And look at what's happened over the last 4 off seasons, right? You had George Kittle get paid, Fred Warner get paid, Deebo Samuel get paid, and then Nick Bosa, he cashed in. Again, all of them not happening until late July, August, or September. And I'll just continue to say this. The 49ers have been aggressive in building their football team. They've been aggressive in handing out money. They like taking care of their homegrown players because it's a great success and developmental story. I think there's something to be said for keeping the core of a business unit together of your best people, whether it be athletes or at a workplace. That's a big reason why I think Chat Sports has been able to be successful. When I was hired March of 2021, I was the 8th employee, and we had 4 studios. And now we have more than 30. I've helped build the company. And we've gone through 2 different office and studio expansions, and we're about to embark on a huge one again. And a big reason for that, having the core group of people together, because I think that consistency, that foundation is important in building a team. It's important in building a business. And if the Niners let their number 1 wide receiver go, who has great kinship with your young quarterback, and they developed such a great connection last year where Purdy was playing extraordinarily well, you let him go, that's risky. He's the number 1 wide receiver on your team, and if he got more targets, I think that he could be much better. At least as far as production. I already think he's a top 10 receiver. Great route runner, great footwork, good after the catch, can go up and get it. He's tough, physical, blocks, red zone threat, deep threat. He's got it all. But for Maiocco to say that, you know, it is pretty interesting. He's at least floating out the possibility of him not re-signing, and all along it's been like, they'll get it done. They'll get it done. We all know that. We all know that's been the talking point. TJ Houshmandzadeh, one of Brandon Aiyuk's offseason wide receiver coaches. He was on 95.7 The Game today. He said, if the 49ers want to get BA signed, give him the Amon-Ra St. Brown deal. I guarantee he'd be in there tomorrow. They don't want to do that, the Niners. If they'd offered him Amon-Ra's deal, he would be in camp. Look, the Amon-Ra St. Brown deal for Brandon Aiyuk, I think, is good value. I think that that would be a really solid deal. Now, at the start of the offseason, the 49ers probably did not foresee another multiple-layer wide receiver explosion happening as far as the market goes. This happened a couple of years ago with Christian Kirk. He got paid by Jacksonville and reset the wide receiver market. Calvin Ridley did the same thing. And then look at all of these deals that have happened since then. Nico Collins, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Justin Jefferson getting $35 million per year. And some people don't think that one player's contract is going to impact the other. You know, maybe in some instances not. And some people have said Justin Jefferson getting $35 million doesn't affect Aiyuk. I think it could. Because Aiyuk now has an argument to be made. Look, if he's making $35, I think that I'm better than Amon-Ra St. Brown. I should be making 30. And once CD Lamb gets paid, it's kind of a race between CD and Aiyuk. Who gets paid next? If CD gets 32, then Aiyuk can definitely say he deserves 30. I've said that Aiyuk is better than CD. Again, don't just focus on the stats. Focus on the targets. Focus on the offensive system, the scheme, how these players are utilized. Aiyuk's on a run-heavy offense. Christian McCaffrey won Offensive Player of the Year last year. He had 2,000 all-purpose yards. Debo had 1,000 all-purpose yards. George Kittle had 1,000 receiving yards, and Aiyuk still 8. That's what's crazy about what the Niners did last year. But that Amon-Ra deal, I think it'd be good for Aiyuk. I think it'd be good for the Niners. It was a 4-year, $120 million deal for Amon-Ra St. Brown. The average is $30 million according to Spotrac, but it's basically 28. Signing bonus, $16.5 million. Guaranteed at signing, $34.6. Total guaranteed, $77. Got to pay elite players, man. Brandon Aiyuk is an elite player. And that Amon-Ra St. Brown deal, kind of the going rate for what Aiyuk can and should demand. All right, wanted to pass along a Niner update there right here on the 49ers Report. Don't forget to hit that sub button. Been pushing out a lot of content this week, trying to get it all in because after mandatory minicamp, which wrapped up today, we won't see the Niners together as a team until late July for training camp. But, of course, the coverage still going to continue on the daily right here on the show. All right, back to watching the NBA Finals. Celtics crushing the Mavs right now. I had Dallas in 6. Still early, but going back to watching hoops. Thanks for watching. Peace.